Good morning. Sorry for the long intro. I was playing with something on there. But anyway, good morning. Welcome to Our Black News. I'm Don Allen, joined by T. Scott Pressure and Reverend Tim Christopher. And our special guest this morning, Mr. Jay Reeves, running for, he's an independent state auditor candidate for the state of Minnesota. And we have so much going on that I was telling Anthony a while back, I said, we should get this auditor guy on because, he could probably lead us in the right direction of how we solve some of this stuff and figure out what the hell is really happening and where the money should go. But good morning, gentlemen. How you doing, Anthony?
Very good, very good. And I'm glad we have the guest on, going for auditor because I continue every day. I continue to see fraud. I'm getting tired of the word fraud now, and it's becoming just a common theme. But the thing that really gets me is how do people get away with this? Isn't there any people that are really overlooking, and don't they vet these people, and don't they? These are the things that are just mystifying to me, Don, because I have a nonprofit, Minnesota's Black Community Project, and we've done a couple of little things with our books and our documentaries, and we get some money, little 20,000, 25,000, and they take us through the ringer. Oh, they want our tax stuff, they want all the stuff. They want bios. They want all of these things. And, I have a master's degree. I'm a distinguished alumni, Minnesota State Mankato. My sister's a tenured professor from Harvard and Columbia with doctor's degrees on our nonprofit. But yet and still, people that come in and say that they can do autism, they don't need a license. They don't need anything. So I'm very interested in hearing from our guest and hopefully we can stop this fraud. I mean, I'm just tired of the word fraud. I'm sick of it. I'm just I really
You
am.
just crash out. Bye. Reverend Christopher, good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
Good morning to you. Good morning. We got a guest today, so I got to be on my best behavior here.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Not
So
at
he
all.
can come back. So
That's
so he will
impossible.
want. So he would
That's
want to
impossible.
come back.
And our guest this morning, I want to just get to introducing him right away. Mr. Jay Reeves, our independent state auditor candidate, state of Minnesota here. He reached out to me way early last year, and timing is everything. And I think this was a good time. And we want to introduce him to our listening audience, our viewing audience, and just hear what he has to say. Jay, how are you doing this morning? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, I have your website up here. We'll put that up in a few minutes and do a couple things, but we need to dive into this morning while Anthony's taking an executive phone call on his phone there. We
Maybe
need to dive.
he got some breaking news we
He
about to
might,
get.
he might, he might. Anthony might have
Breaking
some
news.
breaking news. He might have some breaking news. Let's see here. Let's go here. Yeah, breaking news from Anthony. There we go. So I'm going to play this. This is the report that came up. This is something that we reported here almost 2 months ago when there was first the audit, I think, got completed, and we ran it, and people didn't really say very much. They didn't do anything, and they just kind of sat still. They didn't ask the questions. There was no official statement by the Twin Cities Urban League or the Minneapolis or St. Paul NAACP or any of our flagship organizations. And I'm not saying that you got to come down on anybody hard, but I read what the lawsuit said. It's posted here on Channel 5, and it's just they asked for some really basic things. I know Anthony's familiar with this. He knows what the state requires for grants and things like that, and I'm fully aware of that. And I don't own a nonprofit, but I understand that mechanism. And so if it tells you that you should have some type of curriculum and send it to the state, well, you should do that. I'm pretty sure there are people that this organization knows in their congregation that has the capability of putting stuff together like that. So I don't know where the driver was that made this fail, but I'm just going to play this, and let's withhold judgment until you read everything down here. Also,
It should pay them back. The fight is over grant money from the Department of Human Services meant to pay for behavioral and mental health programs. Our Pilar
you don't even know the lady's name.
Pedraza digs into what the state says was happening instead and what the church has to say all about this. An interesting back and forth.
Most definitely. Now, the state's attorney general filed this lawsuit on behalf of the DHS, and it lays out exactly what the state says that the Zion Baptist Church did wrong
Zion.
when it came to handling your tax dollars. There was no one at the Zion Baptist Church Friday morning. Shortly after news broke, the state had filed suit against it, demanding the church pay back nearly $2.5 million in grant funds, your tax dollars meant to pay for behavioral and mental health programs. But in its lawsuit, the state says the church failed to properly document how it spent the money and didn't hand over its records on demand as the grant required. And that, the state says, was just the start. According to the lawsuit, a follow-on audit showed over a 2.5-year period from 2022 through 2025, church staff sometimes double billed for services, and some got paid as contractors instead of staff, then got paid again as owners of organizations the church had hired to provide various services and programs.
Damn.
We reached out to the church.
That's what I was saying.
In multiple ways. Hi, this is Pilar Pedraza with KSTP 5 Eyewitness News, and did speak with a senior pastor who told me the church's attorneys advised them not to talk about the lawsuit. Earlier this month, state lawmakers got the result of an audit into DHS, which showed problems like this were common.
DHS is paying grantees without knowing whether grantees are providing the agreed upon services. This is like a fundamental problem that needs to be corrected.
Now, DHS says that it takes that hearing and the results from it very seriously. But this case, this lawsuit actually predates that. They actually terminated relations with the church here a year ago this month. You can see that complete termination letter along with DHS.
Don, she stated that this is a common thing. Why is this common?
Right.
I mean,
you caught that too.
I caught that too. Why in the world is this a common thing that fraud is just, it's part of our DNA now. It's just, and nobody's falling, nobody's losing jobs, nobody's losing. And then it's all this money keeps going out, and it just keeps flowing out. And then my property taxes keep going up and up and up and up for a house. Basically, I paid $4,000 for this house when my first son was born.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm paying more taxes than what I paid for the house now.
That's not good. That's not good at all.
I understand things change, and things go up. And, I went to the Chinese restaurant the other day and they charged me more. You got everything go up. Everything go up. So I understand that. But maybe we can get some explanation as to how all this fraud is happening. I'm all ears now. I'm just sitting back. I'm all ears now.
I'm like you. Mr. Jay came on here to somewhat break this down and give us an opportunity to hear his thoughts on A, why this is happening, and B, why they're able to get away with it. So I'm going to sit back and shut my mouth for a minute.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, please.
All right. Where do you want me to begin? You want me to begin back in 2020, or you want me to begin back in 1973, where it all really began?
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Finally, somebody has said it. Somebody said it. Everybody, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong when I say this. The Somalis have moved this to a different level, but they took the blueprint. That's what they did here.
It was there for them. It was
Thank
there
you.
for everybody.
Finally, you got somebody who understood that the blueprint was sitting right there for this to happen. Because it started when they start resettling them people from Cambodia, from the Hmongs, the Vietnamese, the Asians. That's when this stuff started. The problem with the Somalis is they got greedy. Done.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I think
Mr.
with any
Reeves,
criminal,
go ahead,
eventually
please.
what gets them caught is the greed, because they don't know how to stop. They don't just, the majority of them that get caught, it's no matter who it is. I'm not saying it's any specific specific group. I mean, there's fraudsters of all different kinds all across the country and all across the world. What gets them caught is the greed. If they, and what's sad is that this thing started back in the 70s, and we know that because Mr. O'Malley just came out with a report and said it goes back to the 70s. Well, let me give you a little bit of history about the state of Minnesota and what happened in their auditing departments in 1973. They became a siloed organization. They became two different auditing entities. One of them a legislative auditor, and one of them the state auditor. The state auditor is the executive branch, the one that I'm running for. The legislative auditor is the one that does the specific grants and other funding, DHS, at the state level, the legislative ideas. So back in 1973, when that happened, we have had a lot of issues that spurred from that specific idea because we became a siloed auditing entity in the state of Minnesota, where the legislative auditor and the state auditor no longer really communicate and their systems don't talk, and it becomes a problem. And so it's become that was the nexus of the problem. And I don't know if the solution is to hit the reset button to prior to 1973. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we need to identify where the primary source of the problem initiated, and we need to fix it from there and stop it. Now that we've identified where it was, we need to stop it moving forward. It's or find ways to mitigate it as much as possible, legally as much as possible.
So okay, Mr. Reeves. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask him, as state auditor, that would be your job to literally put together a team to start looking into where this money is going. Am I correct? Did I get that right?
Not necessarily, because of the way that the system is statutorily set up. The state auditor audits cities, counties, townships, watersheds, fire relief funds, special districts, these types of things. The legislative auditor is the one that would audit, that continues to audit, the behavioral health stuff, the DHS and things like that. The things that are legislatively authorized, obligated funds. The legislative auditor is the one that does that, and that's an appointed position. That's Judy Randall and her team there that do that, and they've been doing a great job. And before that, it was Jim Nobles, who was there for many, many years, and you guys all know who he is. And that office had run fantastically by identifying where the hot points were, but where the failures came is legislatively. The vulnerabilities were not, the holes weren't plugged, and we have to identify that. We have to realize that, and that's as a state auditor, I believe that they have a very limited scope of authority, especially when it comes to the statewide obligated funds. The only funds that they audit now are the funds that come from the federal government and what's called the single audit. So there's $20.1 billion roughly that come from the federal government that gets audited by the state office, by the state auditor's office in those funds. Some of those are grants. Some of those are other funds that go to the counties, cities, counties, and townships and things like that. That's where the state auditor has an obligation to audit those. So there is some slight overhang on departments, but they almost never talk to each other. The legislative auditor and the state auditor, they remain separate, and it's siloed, and that's part of where the issues have occurred.
Well, I need to back this thing up. I mean, because we have an agency called DHS that is giving out all this money. Okay. Now, I was a supervisor in Hennepin County Child Protection for 20 years. Okay. And so all the child protection in this state, it's a federal organization, but they have allowed the counties to run the child protection. And as part of that, okay, I have a child protection case and a worker has to go out and see this family based on the risk of this family. Okay, they might have to go out there once a month. They might have to go out there 2 times a month. They might have to do a reunification plan. There's all these things that they do that they have to document on this system called SSIS. So in other words, if something happens to one of these kids and the notes say that they've been out there seeing the family, that they did these services, and then they talk to the family and say they don't even know who this person is. They never seen them. They don't know who they are. All hell would be to pay for that. Even for me as the supervisor, they would get me, okay, and they have around the country arrested child protection people for just this kind of a thing. So I for the life of me, I can't see how they don't have, DHS doesn't have any internal things because they give the money. So in other words, here's an organization that just gives money.
Right.
They don't care what they do with it. They're just saying their job is just to give the money. And then there's other entities that are supposed to check that if this is the way it's structured,
it's absolutely structured that way. That was intentional, by the way. So I'm just letting you know that, Governor Walz and some of the other department leads have absolutely said, and the legislators have all said, that when this money was pushed out, and I'm just going to talk for the main boom in much of this fraud has occurred over the last 6 years, given the COVID money. And what happened was our compassion got in the way of compliance. And what we did is we pushed out a whole bunch of money to the community in compassion, good intent, without the internal controls set up in order to put the guardrails up to be a good watchdogs on the taxpayer dollars. And the governor and other legislators have all said that we did this because we needed to get the money out, thinking that they had that good intentions were going to be done with this money. But what it did was it opened up the door for people that don't have good intentions to absolutely fraud, and understanding that the system is set up in a way that it's a reactive system versus a proactive system, of which I'm running on. I'm running on a proactive approach to catch and identify the vulnerabilities in the systems in the forefront versus waiting until an audit, because you're waiting a year for the year to be done, to then perform an audit, which could take a couple of months, to then report the audit and the findings and everything else to the organization. You're talking 18 months after the fact. That's too late. We have to identify it with the vulnerabilities up front and set our systems and our legislation up in front in order to combat the fraud before it starts. And those guardrails have to be up immediately. We can't wait for that to happen 18 months, 2 years, because now in the state of Minnesota, if I remember correctly, I mean, I could be wrong, somebody will correct me, I'm sure, we have a statute of limitations on fraud up to 6 years. So anything that happened in 2020 is done. Like, that's it.
See,
just
hey,
you might as well have that gun money just through your neighborhood, just shooting out the gun money.
This is nonsense. This is nonsense.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
Just a quick thing. Again, in child protection, we would have people that we have contracted to do therapy, to do parenting services, to do things for people in the community. And if they don't do it, they bill us for those things. And if we can't verify that they've done the work, right, if they can't give us reports on what they've done, they don't get paid.
Right.
And this is what I don't understand.
And the other problem too with
I have a question for you when you get done here too.
Yeah, the other problem with the system is that, for example, there's the accountability piece at the DHS has been identified where they're not sure of their authority in stopping the payments and things like that. That'll be litigated, however that is, and that has nothing to do with me or a state auditor role or anything like that. But what we have to do is we have to give the proper authorities the right to be able to, whoever that might be, it might be MMB, it might be other organizations, to be able to stop the funding. And right now, I believe some of that legislation was specifically set up that even during investigations that the funding hasn't been stopped. And if a person is identified as being investigated, the Minnesota state systems are not linked together with their IDs in order to stop funding should they have multiple organizations that fall up underneath there. So that's again, that's nothing that the state auditor can do. I'm just identifying vulnerable spots of possible improvements that would have nothing to do with me. But if we don't identify where the hot spots are and where the vulnerabilities are, we're not going to be able to stop it in any way. So the goal of the state auditor and the legislative auditor is to identify where the vulnerabilities are, where the breakdowns are, provide feedback, and give people ideas on how to possibly fix them. And then it's up to the legislature to be able to put those guardrails in place and be the true watchdogs and to stop the funding from going out. And that's where, to be honest, in a bipartisan manner, these things have just been stalled out in so many different organizations throughout the last 5 to 10 years. You just aren't getting the proper legislation through to put those guardrails in place.
So Jay, let me just cut in. Let me get one question in here. It seems to me like you understand systems, and that's good. That's good that you understand systems. So while you guys were talking, I was like shutting up. I was taking some notes down here, and somebody I wrote the other day, but I needed to rewrite it. And if you understand systems, you know that the state accountability is episodic, not continuous. The audits identify problems, and the enforcement is weak. And we're great at reports, but terrible at change. So does the auditor's office have the subpoena power that it needs to do these audits in a expeditious way? And
No.
lately I've been hearing, that's the first problem. Lately I've been hearing that they're trying to beef up the attorney general's office. Is that the appropriate move rather than going inside of Minnesota Department of Education, DHS, Minnesota Department of Administration, and tweaking those internal mechanisms to make the drivers work so there's a check? Because the compassion piece you talked about earlier, that they were giving money out of compassion instead of compliance, I think is what you said, if I'm not mistaken, it's led them to not check on people. Are checking on that group of people is racist, and we can't do this because we're the woke folks. We're white female adjacent, and we're woke, and we're not going to check on these people. So that's why we don't have one picture of any of these feeding places for feeding our future. The kids eating. There's no pictures anywhere. So how hard, do you think subpoena power or even the threat of subpoena power given to your office, that office would not only,
this is a great question.
let me just finish this up. We're leaning into the Somalis. We're always talking about the Somali people getting money, getting this, getting that, getting whatever. But what about the people that have given it to the Somali community out of those agencies and haven't? Like Anthony says, you got to follow up. You got to do this paperwork. They didn't do any of that. But what's the consequence? But go ahead. Whatever you have to say. I'm here to listen. Kind of.
Sure. So right now the state auditor's office doesn't have that authority for subpoena power. What they have is the statutory authority to do the audit specifically and to dig in and ask the questions and then do information gathering, so to speak, and then present that information to the proper authorities, whether it's the BCA or the AG's office, or if it's a federal crime coming from funds from the federal government, then it could go to the AG's office there for the federal government. But they just present the information, give it to them, and then that's where hands are off. Well, and the problem. What you're mentioning is that the AG's office here in the state of Minnesota, AG Ellison's, wants more staffing and everything else to go after some of this stuff, which sure could possibly help. They're also trying to implement this new Office of Inspector General, of which will be they're requesting quite a few people to do that as well, which both sides, Republicans and Democrats, are having battles on how best to approach this solution. I was opposed completely to the OIG at the beginning. I'm becoming more and more open to it because realizing that the statutory limits of the state auditor and the legislative auditor, they haven't been given the proper authority to do it. So yeah, if you're not going to do anything legislatively to bolster those specific offices, you're going to need to recreate a specific office in order to do that. But what does that do to the state auditor and the legislative auditor? Does that virtually eliminate those offices? Does it bolster those offices? To all of that is to be determined. I don't have the answer to that. I just know that it's a lot of money coming in the short term for those specific offices. There needs to be more accountability. That's it.
Yeah.
Without accountability, the system is going to run rampant. And until you identify those people that have done the fraud and have the accountability piece done, you're just going to continue to have the same problem. So once the accountability piece is shored up too, as well through the AG's office or whomever is going to be the authority to do that, once you do that, the fraudsters are going to move along. They're not going to stay here knowing that just that fear factor alone. There's no fear right now. So there's been no accountability, even at the department head side. There's been identified fraud. There's been identified loopholes. They haven't been closed. So the accountability piece for them, to me, is dereliction of duty in all of these areas that set these things up. We have to identify where the problems are. We have to fix them, and we have to stop the combative nature. Because what fraud does, fraud doesn't see red or blue. Fraud only sees the green, right? And that's our tax dollars. And if we're not protecting those tax dollars, they're going out the door. And while all of our elected officials are arguing, the kids are tearing up the house on the backside and destroying it while you're in the other room arguing about how to stop the kids from messing up the house.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
quick.
First off, I like what he said about the fraudsters don't stop, because Ilhan Omar, even though all of this stuff is going on, she turns around and earmarks $1 million to a restaurant for substance abuse. You know, they don't stop. They don't feel that they have to stop. But let me read you a statement by Jerry McAfee. All right.
Oh, sniggity snap. Let's hear this.
He says, "I won't do to a black preacher and church what black people did to me." He said, "But before you all start making Zion and Pastor Heron guilty, get more information than the local news. Get more information." He said, "The action isn't against the church, but a program inside the church."
Boom.
Right? He said, "Most AA organizations get reimbursement grants, which means you must out the money up first and then invoice the state." He said, "Before a check is given, it must be approved by the fiscal agent. If you have one, then if you have one, then to the state." He said the state oversees, examines it from top to bottom, which is probably a lie. Then they can come to your site, which we know they don't, and go over records. They could care less about records at this point. People was giving money. He said they can randomly select people on your service list and call them. We know that didn't happen. He said something is wrong, but it may not be the pastor. Don't blame him for how much money is going out the doors. He said we get backlash for what happened. We're getting backlash for what is happening in the Somali community. Keith, our attorney general, office has to act on behalf of every state agency. He said, so quit acting like it's Keith personally. Suggestion actions. Ask other AA program what they're going through. Despise and despise a comprehension game plan to fight back. They desire, their desire is to destroy any and all black churches and pastors that don't agree with them. Sitting on the sidelines like you all did my team, you may be next. Think about who's fighting for you for all these years, who have been speaking up. And then somebody under one of the comments says they are quick to judge without knowing the facts and eager to find salacious gossip, a salacious gossip point. So there's that. We're not to blame the pastor of the church for where the money is going and how money goes out, who's using the money, and where the kickbacks are coming from. Don't blame the church. Don't blame the pastor.
And I mean, in a way, he might have a point. Then again, he might not have a point.
Sounds like the Rev is defending this behavior. Sounds like the Rev is defending it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like he's defending it, but what really gets me is it sounds like what the auditor is saying is they can audit. And so they audit and tell DHS they're ripping you off. You're getting ripped off, but nobody does anything. So the auditor comes in and does the audit and says you're being ripped off, tells them that they're being ripped off, but nobody does anything about it after the audit. So what does the audit do? And in regard to the thing with Heron, to me, it's like they jumped on him right away. I mean, the Somalis went to court and the judge said they still have to pay him, even though that they were stealing money. But they jumped right on, and I don't know. I mean, I can't say I know anything about Reverend Heron's organization, if he really had people that could do the work. But see, before you give them the money, you're supposed to vet these people. You're supposed to get VTIs. You're supposed to get what is their background to do this? Do they need a license to provide these services? Do they need any of these things? That just they just hand out the money, and then afterward, they're punishing people at different rates. I mean, really.
Yeah. Well, do y'all know who Brian Heron is?
I know exactly who he is. He grew up a block away from me. He went to grade school with my sister. I knew him.
You know what he did, right?
I know.
Oh, okay. But I just want to I want to make sure we're talking about
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Reverend Heron married my wife and I in South Minneapolis at the Simple Mansion. He was presiding over our wedding. He was our reverend. I mean, I know who he is, and I'm not holding anything against him.
I hold his dad in high esteem. I hold his dad.
His dad was cool. His dad was cool all the time.
I'm not taking anything away from the man. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that people look into. When we sit here and we want to say what he knew and what he don't know, I just want people just to go, well, let me do some research on who this man is. That's it.
Yeah. That's all. That's all. I mean, that's cool. And see, here's what troubles me a little bit. It's like the media was quick to put this out there,
Yes.
And really quick. And to me, what it said to me, it says, hey, Minnesota dominant culture. It's not just the Somalis doing the fraud. It's the Black Americans too. That's actually what they're saying. That's the message that they want to get. Is that all these Negroes is horrible.
All these dark people.
All these dark people. When it comes to the fraud in the state, It's not just the Somalis. Here, we got this one here. We got this one here. They're not Somali. They're Black American. And they've done so. Look at, we did an audit. We got the audit right here. But
you got two Black Americans. You got two Black Americans, and you got Somalis taking billions. You got Somalis that took him to court, and they said, "Well, he puts $150,000, so that he can keep his passport," and he just pulls that out of his pocket and gives, because you only $150,000. You only have to give $15,000. So he just pulls that, writes a check right away. And the court date comes, and where is he? We can't find him. He's not here. We don't know where he's at. Where's Waldo? We can't find him. I mean,
he's living large.
It's just clear that there is something going on. And I mean, these guardrails, I liked what our guest has said.
Jay, we can't see you. You probably need to come out and come back in. Go ahead.
But
I'll come back in. Stand by.
How these things are working and why it keeps falling through the cracks. Because the way it's set up is, you can audit, but then it's up to the people giving the money to deal with that information that they're giving. And so DHS gets the audit, they get the information, and what do? Nobody loses nothing. They continue to give money to people that don't have the skills, the acumen, the ability to do the work. And that's where the fall down is. It's just right there. Why somebody can just walk in there and say, I want to do autism. They probably can't even speak the language that good. And they say, okay, we'll give you $1 million. Yeah. Where is their building? What is their lease like? How have they been there? What is their recruitment process to get people into their program? Do they have a network where they're working with schools and get people from schools that have autism? How are you determining that they have autism? All of these things are there that they don't do. I mean, this is 101 stuff. This is 101 stuff.
Right. And I want to find out also, as far as Brian Herring goes, one of the things Jerry McAfee said was as if Brian Herring and his group was putting this money out before they got the money back.
Yeah.
I would like 5 Eyewitness News to take a look and see, was checks written before the church put money out? Because I've got a feeling that those checks was written before the money went out.
It says there too on the thing from Channel 5 that they were double billing, which gives the sense of that they had to bill the agency to get the money, which means that somewhere they had to put a check out to get a check in some cases. Right. But I don't think all the grants, there's was it almost 2 million? I don't think it all was like that, but I don't know if I have to read the rest of it. But the thing is too, you were just talking about this, and Reverend, a minute ago, about the Somali guy with $11 million who just booked camp. And I found that actual document. I showed it here. And here's something that we didn't talk about just real quick here. You see the picture on your left where it has $100,000 scratched out?
Yeah.
And they replaced it with $50,000 and with conditions. And then down here, they were negotiating with him the whole time. This was a total setup to get him out of here. And then the 150,000 here with it's like, dude, we can have some conditions. How much money you got? Well, 100,000, we'll slash it down to 50,000. Wait. You want no conditions? Well, we got this 150,000 right over here that you can sign. And they just gave it to him, and he broke camp. He left. He's gone.
What do you expect? Expect?
Right.
They first of all, they should have taken the passport away. That should have been, your passport has to be part of this. But they didn't press that. They let the guy get away. I mean, and so, Don, this thing is monumental. I mean, to the point of, like I say, when I worked for the state, the child protection, we had strict rules on seeing people. When we worked with nonprofits that would do therapy and visits and those kind of things.
Yeah.
They would not get paid till we got our reports. until we got, and if they didn't like it, they could come to the board meeting and talk to us about why they didn't provide the information. You give us the information, we'll pay you. You tell us what you're doing. You give us your numbers, we'll pay you. But and so then there's this dichotomy where they say, well, if you're not going to give us the money up front, we can't pay our staff. We can't pay our overhead. We need to have, so, but that just behooves them to say, if you're going to get into this, have your stuff in order. Have your stuff in order. You know, be able to tell your funder, this is what you're doing. Respect that process. And that doesn't happen. And they know it doesn't happen, so they keep doing it. And they do it. Not only do they know these certain people, I'm not naming any names. I don't like to name names, but autism, feeding our future, home health care, adult daycare, all of these things, housing. I mean, it goes on and on. And it just makes us look like dummies. It makes us look like fools. I can see Fran Safford. Oh, you big dummy. I can see all this happening. You just let money just flow out the window like a kite. It's just, whoa, the wind blows, it's all gone. And you can't do anything about it but charge us more in property tax. Charge us more for our license tabs. Charge us more for all these things that, you know, I mean, so I've just about had it with this place, man. I'm all about to get up out of here because I don't think
I'm calling for a moratorium on paying taxes until the fraud is stopped.
Between that and tabs,
I mean, we got to do something.
That's what's also hurting the state of Minnesota is people paying crazy. I mean, like I said, I pay almost $1,000 for my 2 cars for my tabs. That's crazy.
Yeah,
so
that $534 in July kills me every year.
Right?
So,
and doesn't make no sense, man.
We need to start building an escrow account to pay for our tabs.
Yeah, I agree. So, Jay, let's continue on. We couldn't see you there for a minute, but you're back here. It's about 10:18, I think it is here. What? How do we solve this? I mean, where do you start at? What does your first 100 days look like? I mean, this is messy. We don't know who the governor's going to be. And say you win, and say Amy Klobuchar wins, and she's not going to disrupt anything. She's not going to out any of her DFL folks in the state that have been doing the same thing forever. I mean, so how does this change happen? You know, what's your...
Here's how I imagine things are going to happen. We'll take the scenario that you set up, sir. That Amy Klobuchar becomes elected to be the governor. I believe what's going to happen immediately is that first of all, we need an independent state auditor, right? So I think we can all intellectually be honest about the situation in Minnesota, that if we have a partisan state auditor that's been backed by either the DFL or the GOP, it's going to considerably just have this battle back and forth within the legislature in order to improve the office or to bring any change within the office. We have to have an independent voice there for the people, not just for the party, but for the people, right? And that's where some of our systems have failed. And if you watch any of the committee meetings, you'll see right away where the bipartisanship here in the state of Minnesota is out of control, even for the role of the state auditor. It's just ridiculous. So we need somebody who's independent, and everybody says we do. So why are we not making that a mandate for the state of Minnesota that the auditor be an independent? Beside that point, should Senator Klobuchar be elected as the governor, I believe what's going to happen there is that she's going to start to distance herself from anything that has occurred over the last 8 years, and you're going to see some changes in the offices. So she's going to want a fresh restart for her administration. So you're probably going to see some changes. And what she's going to want next to her within the executive branch is somebody to bring the independent voice. And that's going to be the voice of the people to help represent them. And I'm that person in that office to be able to do that, running for that office. What we don't need is we don't need somebody in the echo chamber to continue to be a person on the DFL side to continue to just be a yes person to the next governor, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. And if we do have if it, in my vision for the first 100 days or so, is to get in there and meet the people and the staff that are doing the job and get out to the communities and see where they envision the improvements within the organization to benefit them as the individuals that are using the office single that happened.
Uh-oh.
I think we took up too much bandwidth. He should be back. He's spinning around. He's back. He's back. There you go. Go ahead. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Connection lost.
Okay.
Well,
You're
I
back.
just had a question for him before he goes.
Yeah.
Do you have a party affiliation? I mean, are you Democrat, Republican, Independent? Do you have a party? What is your party affiliation if you have one?
Forward Independence. Forward Independence. So last July, the Independence Alliance Party and the Forward Party merged into one party called Forward Independence. It's the same party that Mike Newcomb was running under for governor when he was in the race.
Yeah, he was on this show. Hey, that's very interesting. I think you were kind of in the middle of what you were talking about and fixing this, and I think it's very important. And I mean, looking at this money distribution thing and the people that are inside. I don't know if you guys ever walked into like the Department of Administration or Minnesota Department of Education and got to look at the people that were working in these buildings. I mean, you would be utterly shocked. You would be shocked, and then you would understand why. I'm not going to give you a spoiler and ruin it for you. I'm just saying, if you have a chance, go walk on the second or third floor where the IT department is for the Department of Administration for the state over there by the state capitol. Go out to MDE out Stinson, out wherever that's out in the Corey area, and just walk in there, sit in the lobby, ask to be walked around. I'm finishing my dissertation, and I literally begged Willie Jett and those guys for an interview for my topic. I got an email, oh, he's busy because it's this, and that, and so they're not in touch with the public. So what you said, Jay, resonates with me of someone like being there for the people. But again, I'd like you to continue. It's just like, how do you address the human capital piece of it, the incompetence piece of it inside of these agencies? These people they shouldn't be there.
Some of them, you're right, shouldn't be. So many of them are union employees through their collective bargaining agreements. So
there we go.
And so I've had a lot of experience in union organizations myself as a union person, and also through the government when I was leading. I served 17 years in the Army. I don't know if you guys know that. I was active duty, and
thank you for your service.
When I retired as a major in 2023, at the health executive level. But what we did is I had a lot of employees. I had 80, 90, 100 more employees, and all of them part of the collective bargaining agreement. We had to follow the table of penalties. And when things occur, we had a lot of issues. We followed the table of penalties and went with HR, and we were able to remove people, but it was nearly impossible. But you have to have the accountability piece start with the table of penalties that is set up. And if you don't do anything, they're going to continue to think it's just like a child. If you don't discipline them accordingly, then they're going to continue to think that that's an okay thing to do, or that's the way we treat people, or that's the way we do our job. And if you don't do it according to the table of penalties, then sometimes a written reprimand, and then a 1-day suspension, 3-day suspension, and whatever the table of penalties says, you can execute that. But the support of the administration has to be there. Me as an executive in an executive role, I understand that I would have the authority to be able to identify where there's room for improvement in bringing these PIPs that need to be done for these employees. And we're not going to just move them and remanage them and repurpose them and move a problem to some other area, because that problem then never goes away. What we're going to need to do is you need to follow the table of penalties accordingly to whatever the collective bargaining agreement is, and but without accountability, again, they're going to continue the problem.
Well, Jay, let me ask you this here question before we go, because we don't know too much about you. I mean,
Sure.
Are you married? You got kids? Are you from Minnesota? Are you a Packer fan?
Oh,
what are,
Hey. Nah.
Yeah.
So tell us about you, though.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in St. Paul, on the east side. I graduated from Johnson High School. I had teenage parents. I'm a twin. I have an identical twin. In 1993, for one quarter, I went to Hamlin University.
You cool then? You cool then?
Yeah, I had to let Don know about that. But I couldn't afford it. Even at that time, it was a little expensive back in '93. But I tried college for a little while, didn't work. Went to the workforce. But I got married young. Had 4 kids with my first wife. I joined the military at 31 years old as a private. Had no college. Through the military while on active duty, I got a bachelor's and a master's degree. Got commissioned. Retired as a major after 2022. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, presumably from the burn pits in Iraq. So I was retired in 2023 as a major. Came back to the state of Minnesota. Felt like my mission wasn't done. I wanted to give back, and because I have a data analytic background, and this is a role that's suited for me from the data analytics side, I wanted to reimagine this office to be a proactive office versus a reactive office where possible, and I think that I can bring that approach. So yeah, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We have 6 kids together, and three boys, 3 girls, 3 grandkids. My son is serving on active duty in Georgia at Fort Benning right now. This is just something that I want to give back to the state of Minnesota. This is my home. This is my family's home. This is going to be eventually, I hope, my grandkids' home, and I want to be able to provide them with the best opportunities as possible. And I have a skill set which fits this role specifically. So, and I'm running as an independent because this role requires it. So there shouldn't be somebody in there that's a partisan. I have to work with both legislatures on both sides of the aisle to bring real solutions to protect taxpayer dollars and be that true watchdog that we're looking for. Not somebody who's just going to be the chihuahua barking in the background and calling people names and everything else. I'm going to work for the people that elect me, all of them, all Minnesotans, not just whether you have a D after your name or an R after your name. It's about the green. It's about the taxpayer dollars. That's who I'm about.
Well, I appreciate that. You know why? Because your military experience, your experience as a father, as a Minnesota resident. See, I think we have so many people, like our city council, for one, in Minneapolis. These are people that have never had jobs before. These are people that all of a sudden they get on the city council. They've never even had a job. If you've gone through 17 years of military, and thank you for your service. My father-in-law was a longtime military guy and ran the Johnny Baker Post, the only black post here in the Twin Cities. And so we need to have people that have some background, that know how some of these things work and can stand up and say when they see something is wrong. And so, I encourage your campaign. I'll be watching it. And we need to have more people that have some background in doing the work that we're commissioning them to do. And so, I just say good luck. I appreciate you being on the show, and
thank you, sir.
We'll see what happens.
I just got to be given an opportunity to spread my message and people to identify with me as Minnesotans. I'm not looking for serious, like tons and tons of support. I'm not looking for I'm not a politician. I'm not polished, as you can tell. I'm an individual. I'm a human being that has not gone to some political classes to be more eloquent and everything else. I'm going to speak true from the heart, like a true Minnesotan. I'm going to tell you how it is. Sometimes I'm going to hurt your feelings with the truth, but that's how I am. It's my military side just coming out, and that's for you. That's for you to process, not for me to process for you. And and we just, if we don't identify where the problems are, and we don't present in the military and otherwise, I was always told, I don't just identify where the problems are. If you're going to identify a problem, you better come with a solution. And I believe that I have real workable solutions within the statute of limitations, with statutes that are set up in the organization for this role. And we can manage this appropriately for whatever the state of Minnesota needs and requires to protect their tax dollars at the city, county, townships, and otherwise. We have to do that. That's where it starts. That's the grassroots effort. That's what I'm here for.
Okay. All right. Mr. Reeves, running for Minnesota State Auditor, independent candidate here in the state of Minnesota. We'll have you on again closer to the election, closer to November, or maybe even before that. Just depends on how things are hopping. And hopefully some of these other mainstream places pick you up and get you on, because this is a good message. I appreciate you being on the show. And but before we get out of here, though, guys, all of us, there's two things that we got to see. I don't know if you guys saw these, but Anthony just brung it up. T. Scott Pressure just brung it up, and I just got to play this. This is the Minneapolis City Council, this first one, if I can find it. Oh, geez, where is it? Okay.
This is not a cop city. At best, this is a cop corner store compared to Cop City.
I hope it's a cop city. I hope it's a cop university.
The rest of us who have a problem with building a cop city, a cop university, we're getting gaslit. We're getting gaslit. We're getting told, oh, it's not a cop city. It's so different from Atlanta.
Just because a bunch of activists and council members call it cop city doesn't make it cop city.
Council members
offend you so much. I'm sorry.
This
decorum.
is not about
decorum. I know.
Who is offending who.
Things got a little fiery at the Minneapolis City Council meeting today when they started talking about this proposed training facility for the city's first responders. So this facility would span almost 5 acres in South Minneapolis. It's expected to cost about $40 million to build. And the city says it's not just for police officers. They say it's a way to bring police, fire, and 911 dispatchers all together under one roof for what they call state-of-the-art training and wellness resources. And that's why they're calling it the Community Safety Training and Wellness Center. That's a mouthful. Today, council members were supposed to vote on whether they want to reallocate about 5.5.
Anyway, that's the city council meetings.
Boy, what a
they
joke.
they go back and forth. And candidate Ilhan Omar, this is the second thing. And I was just saving this. Candidate Ilhan Omar said she is not a millionaire. She said it was an accounting error. Okay. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's something that we got to pay close attention to.
When Ilhan Omar claiming the Justice Department and Congress probing her sudden skyrocketing wealth to $30 million in just 1 year, that they have a problem with her living the American dream. You heard her say the goddamn United States of America. We've got new questions on where she and her husband got all that money. Joining us now, Forbes Media Chair, Editor-in-Chief Steve Forbes. Steve, new information coming in.
So I'm not going to go into detail, but, you got all this stuff going on. These people saying they're making accounting mistakes. You got the Minneapolis in turmoil. You got St. Paul just tearing down stuff, but building up some new stuff on the corner of University and Snelling over there by the Big Bird. And, there's nothing being funded that should be funded, even at the state legislature. The biggest thing, they have this, I guess we have some kind of black legislative agenda in the state capitol, thanks to the people that will keep going down there. But the main thing that the people that work inside of MDE, that work at the state agencies, that hover over black people, they're saying that the state is not going to do any direct appropriations because they're terrified about the fraud. So this means that a lot of people with good programs in the state probably won't get funded this year or next year because the governor and his cronies are scared about the fraud. Why weren't they scared in 2020? And it just doesn't make any sense. But with that said, any last words before we shove out of here, Reverend Christopher, T. Scott or Jay?
Well, anything that city council do, and I'm glad one of the things that is becoming very, very clear to the Democratic Party is they screwed up when they let these so-called activists in the party start running things and having a seat at the table. They're just activists. They're socialists is what they are. That's why I said when a Democrat, a white liberal woman, a Democrat, runs to Liz Collins and Alpha News for a interview, you know that the Democrats know they screwed up when they start letting them boneheads on that council and start making difference. Like Jason Chavez, that was the wrong person. And I said it from day one. And every day that dude proves me right. He should never, somebody like him should never, and there's a couple other ones, but him exactly. We got rid of one like him when we got rid of Philip Cunningham off that board. But Jason should be the next one that these people need to start looking at and going, we can't have people like this, number one. Number two, as far as Ilhan Omar, she ain't did nothing that the Donald Trump and his family ain't done. And let's find out how Eric and his brother is making all this money off of the things that they're doing right now. All of them are making money up there. So she's not doing anything that Trump ain't doing up there, that Marco Rubio is not doing up there, that Lauren Boebert is not doing up there. So I'm not going to dump on her. I want to see everybody's books. So so there you go.
All right. Anthony.
Well, we need to turn the page on this thing. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, the fraud thing is made. We're a laughing stock. We really are a laughing stock. When you look at, I have people calling me, what's going on in Minneapolis from the ICE raids, I mean, it's just one thing after another. We have just been treated like a piñata. I mean, basically, we've just been beaten like a piñata from all the things going back to 2020, defund the police, all these missteps that these people have done, which makes absolutely no sense. When you talk about you're not going to have no police, people were running up here to start ravaging our stores, to start going into criminal. The criminality just raised up when you say you don't have any police. So then you don't have any police. So then they got to have the police they have do overtime. So then there's all that money that goes there, and then they blame them for that. And so the chaos of this whole thing, somebody has to right this ship. I mean, really, because it's a sinking ship. I grew up here in Minneapolis. I grew up here. You know, I'm 75 years old. I grew up here. And I'm telling you, this city has changed like you just wouldn't believe. The Twin Cities. You know, downtown St. Paul used to be a vibrant downtown. Dayton's all the things were downtown St. Paul. They had all, it's a ghost town now. A total ghost town, downtown St. Paul. And so we need people that really are wanting to not serve themselves, but really serve this community and bring this thing back to where it can be. I'm not going to say where it was, what it was can't come back. That's over with. But what it can be is a new deal that I'm hoping that we can get people in here that really see a vision and really see the resources. I mean, there's all kind of companies here. There's maybe 10 companies that are in Fortune 500 here.
Yeah.
There is resources here, but then they're giving it to people that don't know what they're doing. And they're not holding them accountable that they're not doing it. Instead of really reaching out and finding people that can do these things. So I remain hopeful because that's the only way I can look at it. I got to keep my head up.
Keep your head up, please. Absolutely.
If I can add one thing before we go.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So, Mr. Scott, you bring up such a great point, and this is one that I've brought up in a couple of my posts. We can't change what has been done. We can only learn from what has been done and modify the future for the rest of us and mitigate the risks going forward. We can't change what's already been done. It's done. What's done is done. Great. Okay, it is what it is. Now we just need to have lessons learned moving forward. And if we continue to do what we're doing right now without there being accountability, those fraudsters aren't going to go anywhere. And our economies are going to go down, and they're going to continue to come after our tax dollars to supplement the fraudsters. What's happening right now is our tax dollars are supplementing fraudster lifestyles, and we have got to close that door. And if we don't have somebody to identify where those are, and we don't have the strength in the legislature to do it, what's the entire point of the system? It doesn't make any sense. So we have to have the backbone and the strength to identify where the problem is and to legislate against it and learn the lessons learned. There's going to be problems. There's going to be vulnerabilities. It's identifying the vulnerabilities, closing those gaps to make sure that the taxpayer dollars are protected at all costs. And we need independent people with independent thought and independent ways of thinking. And instead of this groupthink moving forward, we've got to have these. We have to move forward independently as a state. And if we don't, and we continue to have this bipartisan combative relationships at the legislature, it's never going to lead to progress in this state.
I agree. Thank you, and thanks for watching. We'll be back hopefully next week. Well, the week after, or one of those weeks. Not May 9th, though. Thank you.